Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
Way more fun than a White House Correspondents' Dinner with not nearly as much Botox or Xanax. It's O'Connor and Company this Monday morning in your nation's capital. Thanks for tuning in here at 6:07. Coming up at 7:05, Joe DeGeneva will be our guest. We'll talk about, well, the story we're about to hit right now, which is the Wisconsin judge who is being arrested for defying the Trump administration. No, that's not true, but that's how it's being reported. They're locking up judges now. Judges that they don't like a judge, they'll just lock them up, Julie. That's what they're telling us. 7:35, we'll talk to Sean Spicer, who gave play-by-play red carpet coverage of the White House Correspondents' Dinner for C-SPAN. Hilarious. 8:05, Ed Morrissey for Hot Air, who's covering the Vatican. And then at 8:35, Trevor Maddich, who you could call the commander's draft either, the second coming of a new pope, or you can call it the funeral of a pope. One way or the other. We'll get a grade from Trevor Maddich on that. I don't know. I was trying to tie the stories together, but it didn't really work. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
And thank you again to everybody who came out to the Beer Chimera last night for the Free Speech Forum. We had a blast, and yes, we're awake. We're chugging along. Absolutely no problem at all getting going this morning. All right, so this arrest happened midday on Friday, and the headlines, screaming headlines, that Trump sicks the Justice Department and the FBI on a Wisconsin judge. And again, the coverage has been absolutely hysterical. You have to dive deep to find out, okay, why exactly
what happened? Yeah.
Was this judge arrested? And when you find out the details of the crime, it's absolutely atrocious what this judge is alleged to have done.
Yep.
It is absolutely atrocious. And once again, it does involve an illegal immigrant. You're going to hear the Attorney General Pam Bondi lay this out here in a second. But bottom line, illegal immigrant facing domestic assault and battery charges. Once again, they just love their illegal immigrants who beat up on their family members. And this judge was alerted that there were ICE agents waiting outside her courtroom to apprehend this person. And so she surreptitiously and deliberately sent him out the back door and concealed him, aided, abetted him, helped him get away, helped him escape, gave aid and comfort to a federal
while the victims
suspect.
Were in the courtroom.
Yes, to protect them. And by the way, in a domestic assault situation, the victims, it takes a lot of courage for victims to come forward.
That's right.
And this judge basically let those victims know, when you leave, he'll be right out on the sidewalk too, because I just made sure of it. It's absolutely despicable.
It's monstrous. And I will tell you this, it reminded me of one of those special victim unit shows. First of all, you can only make this up on some sort of script, right? Some Hollywood script where they're trying to portray this judge as being corrupt or bad or a bad actor. I mean, this is really shocking what this woman did. And again, ICE was right there.
Yeah.
It was right there.
But the media portrayals and what the Democrats have done on this is that Trump is going after judges who distract. If you're not paying attention, you think, because you've seen a lot of headlines about judges who have made unfavorable and I believe unconstitutional rulings against the Trump administration, and it's playing out in the court system. And as of now, Trump has not defied a single court order from a federal judge. I know some people will point to that thing where he was supposed to turn a plane around in midair and bring it back, but that was not a lawful order.
Right.
And so then you see the headline that Trump's arrested a judge. And if you're not paying attention, which sadly a lot of people, I mean, it isn't sad. I don't want everybody to be so obsessed with news and politics every second of the day. So if you're trying to raise your kids, live your life, watch the NFL draft, and maybe take your kid to a baseball game, you see a headline. It's like, what? Trump arrested one of the judges who made a bad decision against him? That's outrageous. And of course, that's also not true. So here's your Attorney General Friday explaining exactly why this judge was arrested. Let's start with cut 5, please.
Rare for victims to want to cooperate. They wanted to cooperate. They were sitting in the courtroom with the state prosecutor. The judge learns that ICE was outside to get the guy because he had been deported in 2013, came back in our country, commits these crimes, charged with committing these crimes. Victims in court. Judge finds out. She goes out in the hallway, screams at the immigration officers. She's furious, visibly shaken, upset, sends them off to talk to the chief judge. She comes back in the courtroom, you're not going to believe this, takes the defendant and the defense attorney back in her chambers, takes them out a private exit and tells them to leave, while a state prosecutor and victims of domestic violence are sitting in the courtroom.
Wow.
You know, Madam Attorney General, great.
Unbelievable. And I swear, these judges, it's like, you're not coming into my courtroom. Excuse me, ma'am, it's not your courtroom. This is the people's courtroom.
Where are the feminist groups? Where are the victim rights groups? Where are the domestic abuse survivor groups? Where are they? I remember a lot of women donning these pink, I'm not going to say hats, these pink cat hats, okay, to stand up for women. I remember a Me Too movement. I remember Believe All Women, right? Where are these women? Where are these groups who are appalled at this judge? They're silent.
The judge takes the side of the domestic abuser and obstructs justice at the federal level. There's no contention that he wasn't in the country legally. You just heard from the Attorney General. He had already been deported once before. Here's a little bit more from Attorney General Bondi. Cut 6, please.
I found out about this the day it happened. We could not believe, actually, that a judge really did that. We looked into the facts in great depth. That's her picture up on the screen, Hannah Dugan, who is now in custody. You cannot obstruct a criminal case, and really, shame on her. It was a domestic violence case of all cases, and she's protecting a criminal defendant over victims of crime.
Now, believe it or not, over at CNN, Ellie Honig actually spoke some rational sense to the hystericals over there. Take a listen. Here's CNN.
Looking at the complaint, let's strip the politics out of it. This is a crime. If they can prove what happened here, it is a crime. This judge, let's strip the Trump of it all out. Let's strip the immigration of it all out. Let's say law enforcement shows up at a building with an arrest warrant. They're looking for person A. Person B then says, hey, there's a secret escape door out back. I'm going to show you the way, and then ushers that person out the back door. That is textbook obstruction.
So there you have it. That was Ellie Honig's last day on CNN. I'm glad we were all able to hear it because that was a really good job from Ellie. Because he did. He delivered the facts. Listen, we'll ask Joe DeGeneva about the facts of this case as well and whether this is normal behavior for a judge to conduct this sort of what can only be described as obstruction of justice. We've got more on this, by the way, more reaction to it, and, of course, what the Democrats did with this. Because, like I said, they tried to deceive you. They tried to make this sound like Trump was just willy-nilly, indiscriminately arresting judges, that this is not normal. And it's like, no, you know what's not normal? That an officer of the court would willingly obstruct justice. A Wisconsin circuit, a local judge, would actually impede federal officers from conducting their lawful duty to protect the citizens of her own state and her own county. That's what's not normal. But for some reason, Democrats, they just keep tripling down on protecting criminals at our expense. More on all of that coming up in 60 seconds. But in those 60 seconds, you're going to be delighted because it's 6:15. Scott Jennings on CNN also added to the rational thought as he engaged in his panel discussion with the very low-rated Abby Phillips on Friday night. Again, the vast majority of people on the panel representing your typical inside the Beltway conventional wisdom of the left. And Scott had to sort of lay it out there and explain how stupid, hypocritical, and full of double standards they make themselves appear. Cut 8. Let's go.
It's an embarrassment.
Let me just respond to something
you
said,
go ahead.
which is that you said, well, you got to worry about the impact on the community.
Yes.
The president and the Justice Department and his people have to worry about the impact of illegal immigration on the country because nobody's been worried about that for years. And the reason this is important is because this is one of Donald Trump's biggest criminal justice priorities. And frankly, it's one of the American people's biggest priorities to control this. And you know well, there are people all over towns, all over this country who have been working overtime to try to stop him from executing on this agenda. If she turns out to be one of them, a spectacle is warranted so other people will stop doing it.
I appreciate it.
Let me tell you what offends
We really
me.
gotta go.
Yeah,
is that there are people and one political party in this country dedicated to re-importing illegal aliens hand over fist, and it is outrageous.
Yeah, that's the point.
Not
And,
true.
and all of this absolutely lousy analysis of how, you know, this is not normal and this is unconstitutional and this is a crisis that a president, that, you know, that this is terrible. They're doing this for a public spectacle. First of all, I agree. I think there was a public spectacle about this to let other judges know that if they try to do the same thing, they will be arrested. That's good. That's what good law enforcement does, by the way, is that you demonstrate. It's like, you can't arrest all the criminals. That's right. You only arrest a few, and you send the message to the rest of the criminals that they're next, and that actually has an impact on crime, number one. But number two, what about the morning raids at Mar-a-Lago? What about the morning FBI raids at Roger Stone's house?
Yeah.
And at a man who was praying in front of a Planned Parenthood. Those were public spectacles too, and these people cheered those moments on.
I'm reading a tweet by Elizabeth McDonald. She is at Fox, and she says what makes this case doubly shocking is the fact that these domestic violence victims were in fear for their lives about testifying because they're terrified of both the defendant and his friends that will assault or even kill them, to the point that they are demanding anonymity in the case. So this judge set this guy free, said leave out a back door, so that and totally ignoring. I mean, again, I think that people are focusing on what she did, and it's horrible and it's illegal and she's in a lot of trouble and she's facing something like 6 years in prison. But these victims, the idea that this woman turned her back on a domestic violence victim who was terrified to testify, it's absolutely shockingly immoral.
You're right. And the only thing in your statement that you just made, which was absolutely righteous and correct, is I would take issue with your statement that everybody's focusing on what this judge did, because they're not. The headline from Axios. Yeah. Here's the headline. Breaking, FBI arrests judge in Wisconsin. That's not the story.
I know.
The story is not that the judge was arrested. The story is what the judge did to get arrested.
Yep.
But you don't see that story. Breaking, FBI arrests judge in Wisconsin. But that's what they're trying to feed this narrative. Here's Amy Klobuchar, a senator, a sitting U.S. senator, reacting to the story. This is not normal. The administration's arrest of a sitting judge in Wisconsin is a drastic move that threatens the rule of law. Wait, what the judge did literally threatens the rule of law.
Yep.
This judge thwarted federal law enforcement officers from protecting the community and carrying out their duty to arrest a criminal and protect innocent victims. But Senator Klobuchar, the administration's arrest of a sitting judge in Wisconsin is a drastic move that threatens the rule of law. While we don't have all the details, this is a grave step and undermines our system of checks and balances while we don't have all the details. But, of course, now that the details are in, you don't hear a damn thing from these people.
That's right.
They keep doing the same thing over and over again. And it's amazing. The immediate moment that they see a story and immediately jump to conclusions, it always ends up being in the defense of a criminal, illegal alien who was charged with beating up innocent people in this country.
He's just a Maryland man. Yeah, he's just a dad.
Yep. We don't have all the details, but from what I can see, he's a Maryland man who deserves defense. She shielded an illegal alien who was, he was charged with strangulation and domestic violence, but all the headlines. 3 counts of domestic battery, physical pain or injury, and he had already been deported once and then illegally returned in this country. This judge should be the poster child for everything that is wrong with our judiciary in this country, but instead they're trying to prop her up as a poster child.
Anne Frank.
And they literally put her up there saying it was like she was protecting Anne Frank in the attic from the Nazis.
Just amazing.
Listen, the lines are drawn.
I had no idea Anne Frank beat up everybody in that attic.
Well, I don't think she did. I think
Too
they might
much?
be getting history wrong.
Too much?
there. I was just going to let the Anne Frank thing lay there, but fair enough.
I didn't make the analogy.
You were out of control on stage last night, and you just continued this behavior. Coming up at 7:05, we'll talk to Joe DeGeneva about how this is not normal. It's 6:23.
Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
6:37. It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here on this Monday morning in your nation's capital, 20th day of April. Boy, by the end of this week, we'll already be in May. That's crazy. Coming up at 7:05, Joe DeGeneva will be our guest. At 7:35, Sean Spicer, who was sort of tangentially covering the White House Correspondents' Dinner. He didn't go, of course, as any self-respecting conservative would. 8:05 brings us Ed Morrissey, who's covering the Vatican and all the happenings there. And then at 8:35, Trevor Maddich on the Commander's Draft. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. And, boy, sometimes photographs... My wife Meredith, I may have mentioned her now and again. Her last job before we got married and her full-time job became me was as a working with photojournalists. She was a photo and video editor for Roll Call Congressional Quarterly. She had a team of photographers that worked for her, and she was in charge of sort of giving them their assignments and dealing with their work product, making sure that it all got distributed properly for royalties, all that stuff. Good stuff, actually. She's really good at what she does, and she's got a keen eye as a photographer. You can tell great photographers who can see a moment developing before their eyes and then capture it for forever. Like the iconic, I mean, there's something about Trump that he just delivers iconic moments, like the assassination attempt, like, you know.
Yeah.
And boy,
the McDonald's
it
event, the garbage truck, you know,
yes,
so many.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like it's one thing to set up a situation where a photograph is going, you know, you have a good shot at it, but Trump always delivers with that moment. Yeah. And that certainly happened at St. Peter's Basilica while President Trump and world leaders from everywhere came to pay their final respects to Pope Francis. Obviously, while there, it was an opportune moment to sort of regroup on some of the pressing issues, and nothing is more pressing in Europe right now than the hopeful resolution of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So Vladimir Zelensky and Donald Trump were captured in a photograph, just the two of them, sitting, leaning into each other, talking with the giant marble columns of St. Peter's Basilica and the
bronze
Vatican
doors, yes,
surrounding them, and the bronze doors, the rotunda. At one point, there's video of President Macron of France, sort of like bringing Zelensky over, and they were bringing a third chair, and Trump's like, "I got this.
You can take your chair and take a hike."
Exactly.
Yeah.
He wants to talk to me. He knows English. He doesn't need some French frog translating. We're fine. So then what happened from that meeting? Well, good question. Zelensky took to social media and said, "Good meeting. We discussed a lot one-on-one, hoping for results on everything we covered, protecting lives of our people, full and unconditional ceasefire, reliable and lasting peace that will prevent another war from breaking out. Very symbolic meeting that has potential to become historic if we achieve joint results. Thank you, POTUS."
Okay, I appreciate your reading that, especially in that accent, but I'm going to translate this. Dad told me that I am not grounded after I finished this many chores. Yes.
Could be. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting the way this is taking it. Listen, Trump came in there obviously saying, you know, the prior administration was like all in on Zelensky. They treated him like a war hero. They treated him like, you know, the second coming of Winston Churchill. Obviously, Putin feels isolated. He doesn't think he's going to get a square deal. I'm going to pretend that I'm like, you know, I'm above it all. It's a fresh set of ears. I'm going to listen to both sides. Maybe that's what's needed to reach resolution. I tell you, from public statements recently, Trump is like, all right, Putin, it's time to put up or shut up, Putin. Yeah. And Zelensky, of course, has been dragging it. Zelensky's concerns that Crimea is not part of any deal here is so completely unrealistic. The time for that conversation was 2014. You remember when Barack Obama was president and he was making fun of Mitt Romney and saying the 80s are calling and they want their foreign policy back, you know. you know, when he was such a cool kid for downplaying the threat of Russia. Yeah, that's when you try to protect Crimea. I'm sorry. It's unrealistic at this point.
Yeah.
So where do we stand? Well, let's find out. First, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz yesterday about that photograph, cut 9. Let's go.
How iconic. That setting, that scene, that meeting is going to go down in the history books for President Trump to be a president of peace, to be talking peace and diplomacy in the Vatican, of all places, just before we were able to walk out and the president sat with world leaders, people of all faiths, hundreds of thousands in the crowd. And the thing he was determined to do was to talk to Zelensky face to face and talk about how we're going to get the largest land war in Europe to an end. Both sides have to want that. He's expressed his frustration with both sides, but yet his determination.
All right. Coming up, you're going to hear what Secretary of State Marco Rubio had to say about that meeting as well, which was actually rather detailed and substantive. And then we got to talk about First Lady Melania Trump. Boy, were we represented as a nation at that funeral. It was a stunning sight to behold, with all of these world leaders gathered for the funeral of this Pope. Doesn't happen very often, once every 10, 12 years, it appears. And it was quite a moment. Melania Trump, a devout Catholic from Europe, really, really an amazing moment there in Rome. We'll get to all of that, starting with Marco Rubio in just a moment. It is 6:43. All right, Marco Rubio yesterday asked about that meeting, what went down between Trump and Zelensky. Are we closer to peace? Cut 10.
Well, let me ask you about some of the language you've taken. Just 3 years ago, you co-sponsored a Senate bill barring the United States from recognizing Russian claims to any portion of Ukraine's land. Let me read you part of what you said. Quote, Vladimir Putin is the real aggressor in this war, and he is attempting an unjustified takeover of a sovereign democratic country. The United States cannot recognize Putin's claims, or we risk establishing a dangerous precedent for other authoritarian regimes like the Chinese Communist Party to imitate. What message does it send to China and other adversaries if the United States allows Russia to keep the land it's illegally claimed?
All right, let's pause there for a second. As usual, that question was not to find out and elucidate information about where things stand right now and where the peace process is. That was a, let me use your words against you and trap you into something about right now. I get so frustrated with the media on these Sunday shows. I feel like they learned all the wrong lessons from Tim
Does she know
Russert.
He's not president?
Right.
That senators have lots of opinions on things, then they join an administration and they have to get in line with the current administration.
Right.
He's not president. Whatever he felt before, it might be worthy, which I'm sure they gave him no time on that back then. But
right, no one wanted him on the air then. That's right. And by the way, maybe, just maybe, things are different now. When you're 2 years after the conflict, Biden administration did nothing. Yeah. He's the Secretary of State. The priority now is peace at all costs, rather than just, but again, it doesn't matter. They think their job is to just have that gotcha moment.
Gotcha.
Whatever. Anyway, let's hear Rubio's great response.
Well, first of all, I would say that right now there's a lot of press reports about this, that, or these concessions or that concessions. A lot of things have been discussed, and the reason why those things are being discussed is very simple. Not because we're going to force anyone to do anything or pressure anyone to do anything like this, but because we need to understand what are the options to bringing about an end to the war. We need to be grown-ups and realistic here. In any negotiated end to a war, both sides get something and both sides have to give something up. That's a reality. Without speaking specifically about that or another, you wrote that, you talk about that was back in September of 2022. Since September of 2022, this war has continued. Thousands of more people have died. Generational destruction that Ukraine's going to spend 2 generations rebuilding from. This is a war that needs to end now. And so in order for this war to end, there are things Russia wants that it will not get, and there are things Ukraine wants that it will not get. Yeah. If it wasn't the case, that would have been done a long time ago. No one here is claiming that one side is going to unconditionally surrender to the other and bring this to an end. But that's why diplomacy can be difficult and time-consuming, but it is the only way to end this conflict. There is no military solution to this war, The only solution to this war is a negotiated settlement where both sides are going to have to give up something they claim to want and are going to have to give the other side something they wish they didn't.
Both sides get something.
And that's what we're trying
that's
to
good,
achieve
Jeff.
here. So more
Jeffrey, thank you. Both sides get something. Both sides give up something. There's obviously war is not going to solve this because they've been blasting away at each other. It's cost lives. It's cost money. Let's end this thing. That's the grown-up response. And
that's right.
And
again, she plays a clip from 2022. There has been so much that has happened, and again, his opinion on this matter is going to evolve too. Unforgivable to the left.
That said, iconic moments all around over there at the Vatican for the funeral. We're going to talk to Ed Morrissey about the funeral itself, and then where we move in terms of the conclave and the selection of a new pope. That comes up at 8:05. And yes, we will talk about how stunning Melania Trump looked, how stoic she was. It was during her birthday, by the way, as well, while she was there. But we'll get to Melania and Trump and the funeral coming up a little later. Right now, it is 6:52. Coming up, we've got Joe DeGeneva. Talk about that Wisconsin judge and whether it's unprecedented. We'll also talk to Sean Spicer about those first 100 days of the Trump administration. Also, his thoughts on the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Also, our thoughts on the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Plenty to come. We're halfway there. Cue the Bon Jovi. It's 7 o'clock.